Here comes everybody. Good afternoon. And
Hello.
hello, glad you guys are here, gals are here. All right, today our topic is, so you're under contract, so now what happens? So we're gonna be looking at both the buy side and the seller side. So if you have a question, don't hesitate to just chime in here. I'm also gonna be asking for participation. So if I could see your faces, that would be very helpful. I don't care what you look like. I don't care what your house looks like behind you. Thank you. Doesn't matter. Hello. And so chime in, because this is going to be an interactive one versus just me talking all the time. Does that sound fair? All right. So I know, Kelly, you don't have voice, right? Oh yeah, I can hear you.
You can hear me, yeah.
Okay, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen and, oh, I don't want to do that. All right, can everybody see this?
Yes.
Is it big enough? Can you read it?
Better.
Better? Okay. So we're going to be talking about both the buy side and the listing side and how they are different or the same. Okay. So let's start with the buy side first, because I think there's probably more information there than on the listing side. So we assume that you already have negotiated the contract and that everybody has signed it, right? So my first question is, who binds the contract?
Listing agent.
That's an option. Anybody else got an idea? Do, 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 do.
Buyer's agent.
Could be. Who's supposed to sign it? Who's supposed to bind it? All right, teaching point. Get your pen out, get your paper out. This is very important. First of all, it has to be one of the agents. It's not your client, right? So the person that binds this contract is the one that has received it last with all signatures and initials. So it has to be complete contract, completely filled out. The last person that receives it with everything filled out, that's the person that binds it. Make sense? Now, that's not necessarily how it happens in the real world. And there are some reasons for that. One is that buyers are anxious to get it bound so that the seller is anxious to get it bound so that the clock starts ticking. And especially in a multiple offer, we want to make sure that we are binding so that they don't go binding on somebody else or terminate or remove it. So there's a lot of different reasons why someone might want to try to sign it, but legally from school, what we learned is the person who gets it back with everything signed is the one who binds it. Now, once that starts, let's say today it was, hey Yvette, let's say today, which is the 17th of August. I can't believe I'm saying the 17th of August. Today was the date and it's a 10-day due diligence. When does that binding contract, when does the due diligence end? If it was bound at 1 o'clock in the afternoon on the 17th of August.
26th.
Let's see. 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, 26, 27.
27.
27th at what time?
1 o'clock.
No.
Oh, midnight.
Midnight. By midnight on that last day. Okay? Now, I don't want you waiting until midnight to get this due diligence period squared away. And certainly don't want you to send over amendment to address concerns the day of the 27th. That's just bad form, right? Especially if you've got a whole list of repairs. requested. But know that you've got till midnight to protect your client's earnest money, okay? I wanted to mention this because I've had several agents confused about this process, and obviously with the answers that we were getting, it is something that continues to be confusing. So everybody clear on that? We good? Okay, so on the buy side, we are under contract. Now what happens? We've got a binding contract. I've already started the process. So the first thing we've got to do is get a copy of the full binding contract. That includes all of the amendments, all the exhibits, all the agreement, the pre-approval letter or pre-qualification letter, whatever it might be, everything that's there, including your seller's disclosures, your community association disclosure, whatever else is in there, right? You need it all there and all signed. And once you have that, it needs to be submitted to the lender and the attorney as soon as possible. Okay? And from the listing side, you need to have that, and you need to make sure that the lender or the attorney has it. Okay, so what's next? Anybody? What else, what do you think we need to do next once we go under contract?
The buyer, you would need to schedule your inspection.
Okay, exactly. And that needs to be done right
ASAP.
away. If you're smart in this multiple offer situation, you will have scheduled that inspection before you even went under contract. Put a temporary appointment set so that you've got that. So you're going to schedule your inspection, and you're going to need to get the CBS code from the agent, because they're not going to be able to get in to inspect it without that CBS code. All right. What else needs to happen ASAP?
Tell the lender you're under contract.
Yes, which we have here by submitting the contract to the lender for sure.
Oh, there we go.
Thank you, Kendra.
I missed that as I was switching from my phone to my computer.
No worries. You bet. So we've contacted the lender. We've scheduled the inspection. Can we sit back and relax?
No.
All right. What else has to happen?
Well, earnest money. You need to, that's right. Bring the earnest money to the office.
It must be turned in. I cannot emphasize this enough. It must be turned in with the time frame, within the time frame that you put on the contract, period. No exceptions. All right. So that means that whether they're going to send it by check, they're going to FedEx it, whether they're going to drop it off at the office during office hours, whether they're going to drop it off and put it in the mailbox at the top of the ramp that's a locked mailbox. I hope you all know that we have that. The most important thing though is that if they're dropping it off after hours, make sure they put it in an envelope and it has the address of the property and your name as the agent on there. We've had way too many orphan checks lately, and it's because people are just dropping money off and they're not putting who to assign it to. Okay, so that earnest money has to be in. Now, great news is in the last month we've now had a new process. So for those that don't have checks, because you can give a personal check for earnest money, however, a lot of people, especially the newer generation, don't have checks. They can do an ACH, which is the same as a check. It's not a wire. I don't understand the difference because it's electronic, but it's not a wire. So Melissa Collier, who is our MCA, sent out the information on that. So I would look for that email and I would flag it and tag it so that you know that to use that as a resource later on. Okay. All right. So you've got the earnest money in. You need to make a copy of that earnest money check or get a copy of the ACH, and you need to send the copy to the agent and the lender and the attorney. Okay, everybody needs to know the earnest money's in. Now what? There is a buyer's info sheet that will be sent from the attorney that needs to be completed. okay? Has to be completed as soon as possible and returned to the attorney. It includes information, personal information, so they're the ones that are going to fill it out, but how to contact them, their info on, what are some of the other things, Kendra, that's on a buyer side? I could give you more information on the seller side, but on the buyer side, I mean, their socials for sure. What else would be on the buyer side?
Regarding information that we need or
Yeah,
steps
on
to
the
take?
on the buyer info sheet.
Well, if we've already done the pre-approval, then we should have most of the info that we need. We'll start requesting documents from them to verify the information that they gave us for the pre-approval if we haven't done that already. So those are going to be things like bank statements for any accounts that will be used to fund the loan, copies of your recent pay stubs, and potentially tax returns or W-2s.
Okay.
So that's going to be something else for the buyer to be aware of, is to start getting those documents in. And then something else that is critical right now, especially, is to get on top of their appraisal payment. In some situations right now, we are ordering the appraisal prior to payment because appraisers are so busy right now that we've got to get them scheduled as soon as we can. But that's going to be a next step as well.
So we typically wait till after due diligence, but what we're seeing is because things are going so fast and so quickly, paying for that appraisal up front is critical in order to move forward fast. So that's why you would pay for that appraisal. And the buyer does need to pay for that appraisal up front. I'm going to change under inspection to inspections because there may be more than one, right? So you've got your general inspector, but let's say they see issues with the roof. And of course, as a good inspector, they're going to say, you should have it checked out by a specialist. So it may have more than one inspection. And once you have those inspections, then you're going to need to review the inspections with the buyer and create your ATAC. And the ATAC stands for Amendment to Address Concerns. It is a GAR form that you're going to fill out with that stuff that you're requesting. Now, there are two ways that you can go about this, or a combination of both. You can either ask for specific requests for repairs, or you can ask for money in lieu of repairs. Except you don't say in lieu of repairs on an amendment to address concerns. You never use that phrase, in lieu of, ever. Lenders don't like it, okay? So what you can do is reduce the sales price, or you can increase seller paid closing costs. Which is more beneficial to your buyer?
Closing costs reduced.
Why?
Because then you don't have to worry about the appraisal, and it's like money, it's cash money they're not going to have to bring to closing.
Exactly. That it's cash money in their hand that they are not going to have to pay, and therefore they've got more to fix the items. Reducing the sales price does not give them that. And for the amount of money that they're saving, if I remember correctly, for every $10,000 that a mortgage is, it saves you about $10 on your mortgage payment, I think. I think it's about equal. I'm not
like 10 to 20, 25. I mean, it's not much.
It's not much. So reducing your sales price does not help them at all, unless you're worried about appraisal, and then it could help them. Okay? Now, you're going to negotiate this amendment to address concerns, meaning that the seller can come back and say, yeah, no, we're not doing this, or we'll do that. And so there's a negotiation. And we've covered that in other sessions. In fact, we just had one a couple weeks ago, so I would request that you look at that on our YouTube channel, quantrain.com, where we talk specifically about amendment to address concerns and right to repair. But you're negotiating, and in my mind, the cleaner that you can make this, the easier it is to negotiate. And by clean, I mean you're only asking for safety items, for large ticket items, you're not nickel and diming people to death. And part of that is knowing what things cost. So there's part of that, okay? So you've negotiated on amendment to dress concerns. Now on there is a box to check, and it says shall or shall not terminate. If everybody's in agreement to this and has signed it, this due diligence will terminate or will not terminate. If you're working with the buyer, will not terminate is what you would want to check, because it means that they've got their full, example, 10 days of due diligence. Right?
Mm-hmm.
But most listing sites would prefer it to say shall terminate. If your person knows they want to move forward with this, why continue on with due diligence? Unless there's something iffy in their brain, get rid of that and let's move on. Let's get out of due diligence, okay? Now, all of this is happening during the due diligence period. And if it's, for example, 10 days, did I spell attorney wrong? Oh, it's because, never mind. Attorney. Thank you. Let's say we sent it over on the 7th day and we have not yet heard back from the sellers. And we're now in day 9, 8, 9. We're starting to get antsy. Is that a problem? Do we need to be concerned?
Yeah, because they need to have a chance to fix it or respond, so then you can negotiate.
They have to respond. If they don't respond within your 10 days, are you okay? You see where I'm going with this, right? The work is not done during those 10 days, but the agreement to do the work is. So if they have not responded and it's your 10th day and it's 11 o'clock at night, you can guarantee that I'm sitting with a termination, a TNR, in my hand, ready to hit the button to send over to the listing agent. It does not mean that the deal will be totally dead. We may be able to fix it the next day. But if my client's due diligence is up that night, my job is to protect their earnest money. And I'm going to do that. Okay? Is everybody clear on that process? So many times when I'm sending over my amendment to address concerns for them to sign, I'm going to tell them up front, listen, I'm sending over a termination and release form for you to sign. This I want to just have in my back pocket in case, timing wise, we don't get a response from them back in time. Then I will be able to send this over. My job is to protect your money. It doesn't mean we're not going to have this house. It just means that they didn't respond in time, and I'm not willing to take that chance on your earnest money. Does that make sense to everybody? I don't do it every time, but especially when we're in a tight window of responses, I would have that one all ready to go. So then, you know, late at night, you're not keeping them up till midnight trying to get them to sign one of those suckers in advance. So we have negotiated the amendment to address concerns. Now, you need to check all of your documents, and we haven't even talked about documents yet. So let me share with you. Can you guys see this? It says the closing co-services buyer. No. Hold on. Hold on, here it is. Now you can see it, right? Can everybody see that? If and when you use a contract to close, you are still responsible for this contract. You are still responsible for all the items that are on this sheet. Does not mean that you have to do them. So on a contract to close, you would pay them per contract. They are paid at close if it closes, and only if it closes. And these are all of the things that they are doing for you behind the scenes. On average, they run around $400 for, I think the maximum I've seen is $415. Some are less expensive, some are more. But it all depends on how good they are. And all of these things are done by your contract to close person. I tell you this because this list, if you are not using contract to close, all of the items that are on this list are things that you will be responsible for making sure are done. So you need to order the termite inspection. You need to do the electronic reminders for all the contract deadlines so that everybody's in agreement. Submit your office through command. That's one thing we have not talked about, and this is the next piece, which is critical. You have to submit through commissions tab in command, and that's so you get paid. And you go through that process, and we have had classes on command commissions that walks you through that process to make sure that you know exactly what you're doing. That's how you get paid, and it needs to be done within 72 hours of your binding contract. Okay? All right. Oh, I'm sorry. I switched back and toggled, and you didn't see that, did you? Never mind. Okay. You're verifying that the buyer has gotten the loan application, and with the lender, you've gotten the estimate. The intent to proceed from the lender. You're verifying that they're working on their homeowner's insurance. You're scheduling the closing. You're sending any additional amendments to both the attorney and the lender. You're sending the buyer the closing email with directions. You're also sending confirmation of the closing to the other side. You're ordering the home warranty. And the list goes on and on and on and on. So all of this you'll be responsible for on the buy side. Okay? Questions about this? I am not going to put that on mine. Let's just say buyer action items sheet. Okay? Because there's a whole bunch of them. Then, in addition to that, if the appraisal comes in low, we have to negotiate on the appraisal. Let's say, and I've actually heard of a few, I haven't had any problem. I'm knocking on wood everywhere I can. I haven't had any problems with appraisals lately, but I do know that other people have. And with being in multiple offer situations so much, it doesn't surprise me that they're getting appraised much. I mean, that the prices are going up, but the appraisers are still hesitant to move up with it. Does that make sense? Kendra, are you in agreement with that?
Yeah, I am. One thing I was going to say is that there is, in certain situations, especially if you truly feel like you have to have other comps to do this, but you can do a reconsideration where we can actually have another appraiser go out, but you have to submit your own comps to try and prove your case as to why this value should be reconsidered. But like you said, in multiple offer situations, you're not going to be able to do that. There's going to be somebody else who will just take it as is.
Yeah, and that's the challenge is if you've got all of those that are backups, then you really don't have a lot of room to wiggle. Because in an appraisal situation, if it doesn't appraise, you've got one of four options. Either the seller is going to reduce it to the appraisal price, the buyer is going to come up with the difference, there's some kind of happy medium, or if they cannot agree, then it terminates and everybody starts all over again. So one of those four things is going to happen, but you're going to negotiate all of that. And I don't know how else to put this, but one of the things that we deal with on our side is the minutia. And that's probably not spelled right. But you know what I mean, right? It's all the little things that get in the way. So it's coordinating, even though it's on the contract, sometimes there's stuff with buyers wanting to get in earlier, drop their stuff off, or the seller wanting to stay a couple of days later and in order to, you know, after closing, or the lender is having trouble unless it's one of our preferred lenders. Lender is having problems getting the information, and quite honestly, we're not going to close on time. Or we find out that there's a tax lien we didn't know about, and so we're waiting on reports from the federal government. There is a lot of stuff not in our control that could sideline a deal, a lot. So when I mean minutia, I just mean we have to make everybody comfortable with what's going on that's totally out of our control. And that takes a lot of effort. And there's a lot more of it than people realize. Little stuff like people getting pissed off because they have to again submit their underwriting to check. I had one guy that was ready to walk on a deal the day before close because the lender wanted to check his credit one more time. I was like, but they do that all the time. But I've frozen my credit. It's like, well, we told you not to. And it was ridiculous. I mean, he was so bent out of shape that they wanted to check his credit one more time. So there are a lot of conversations that we have during this time to help walk them through that, to make it easy on them. But it's frustrating, okay? So this is just an example. Then after closing, so you need to do a final walkthrough. By the way, if you are the buyer's agent, I don't care if you go with your client the day before to check on any repairs that needed to be fixed, or a couple of days before and the house is in great condition. I highly encourage that you put your eyes on that property day of close. And here's why. I've heard of way too many, and I know personal stories. My niece is one of them, who did exactly that, did a walkthrough the day before, happened to be walking or driving by the house on the way to closing, and there was water pouring down the driveway. The water heater had busted overnight. So we had to obviously very quickly renegotiate on that and get that fixed. If they had closed, that buyer would have been screwed. So you want to make sure that it's in the condition that they put the contract on. Okay. Then during close, here's some other things. So during the closing, the listing, or as the buyer's agent, you're going to discuss with them a homestead exemption. Terry, what's homestead exemption? Oh, I can't hear you. I'm sorry, hon. You unmuted yourself, but I can't hear you. Is it your monitor? Nope. Okay, that's all right. Somebody else. Homestead, other than Kelly, because Kelly's already chimed in a lot. Somebody else. What's homestead exemption? Crickets?
When you
All
have
right.
one person who's in the house to pay taxes.
All right. So Grace, if a property is being sold as a permanent residence for an individual, it's their home that they're living in. The year after they buy it, so if they bought in 2020 and 2021, they can apply for homestead exemption. Most counties in our state do have it. Some are better than others. Cobb and Cherokee are some of the higher ones. And what it is a discount on their taxes in perpetuity while it's their single family residence. They have to apply for it. So I remind them at closing that I'm going to send them at the first of the year information on exactly what they need to do to apply for their homestead exemption. Okay? So I remind them of that. If there was a home warranty, I show them a copy. I print out a copy of their a receipt, and I give it to them so that they have it, because they won't get a packet from their home warranty about 6 weeks after close. But if something happens between then, they need to know who to call and what their account number is. So I always print that off for them. And last but not least, I talk to them about their warranty deed. Now, some good attorneys like Thomas and Brown mention it. I re-emphasize it, because what they don't realize is the amount of junk mail that they're going to get asking for money. It's a huge scam. So, you know, and warning, urgent, they make it look really important. They need to know that that's coming so that they don't freak out, and to let them know that, you know, if they ever have a question, to call you and you'll be glad to take a look at it. But know that their warranty deed is going to come straight from the attorney after it's been posted at the court, at the county court. Okay? Now, once you have completed your during the closing, you also need to bring with you the earnest money. If our office is holding it, you're going to bring that earnest check, and you'll pick it up from the office. It'll be in your mailbox, and you're taking it with you to closing, okay, and handing it to the attorney. If you don't, that earnest money is going to be deducted from the total amount of commission, right? Then after you've closed, you're going to take the settlement statement. Sorry, that is my bread maker. Making homemade bread. It smells good in here. Settlement statement. And you're going to scan it, and you're going to put it in your command. Okay. You're going to take the settlement statement and the check to Kwan, and you're going to put it in the earnest money box. Okay. Then you need to fill out the FMLS 118, I think is the number, 118 forms for the sale, and Georgia MLS. Now, because you're not on the sales side, you may not have to do this, but you need to confirm that it's been done so that the sale registers and that you get the credit on your side. Okay? And let me check one other thing.
I have one just FYI point. So, because a lot of agents don't know this, or don't need to worry about it, but it gets asked. It's the day before close is when your buyer will need to go to their bank to wire their funds to the attorney's office. They should receive specific instructions from the attorney on how to do it and where to send it, but that happens the day before. They don't bring a check to the close. They don't, it's all done via wire, and ideally the day before. Now, we've had situations where we have to do it, the day of, just prior to close, and that works too, but it's ideally done the day before.
And I will mention that you need to find out what their bank is, because there are certain banks that require that they request the wire in person. And this has happened twice now in this last month, where one person the bank was 7 hours away and the other was 2 hours away. If you wait to the day of close, you ain't closing on time. So you need to make sure that they know how long that process is going to take with their bank, and exactly how they need to finalize it. You also would check with them to make sure that they've turned on their utilities and have that all squared away. And I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but that's pretty much it. Now, remember, it's this plus this. That's all the stuff that you're responsible for on the buyer side. Okay? Which is why I say leverage your time so that it only has to be this. And even some of this they're doing for you. Okay? So if you use contract to close, you're still responsible for making sure the earnest money's in. You're still responsible for making sure that you're negotiating on the amendment to address concerns and inspections. You're still doing the appraisal negotiations. You're still dealing with minutia, but almost everything of all of this is already taken care of on the other side by your closing coordinator. Okay? Questions about the buy side? Cool. So on the listing side, is it shorter? No, it's not. All of this stuff, you need to get the CVS code to the agent. You need to make sure you've got the earnest money and that it's sent to everybody. You still have to negotiate on your amendment to address concerns. You still have to submit your commission command within 72 hours. There is a seller action sheet, and that one is more detailed than the buyer's, because the sellers, the attorney and the lender don't know. So that seller's sheet from the attorney is going to include social security numbers and the bank information, because they have to start checking on title and on the mortgage that's still there. They will not, and hear my heart, they will not be able to start checking on the title, on the community association letter and information from the HOA, on any of that until they get that seller info sheet in. So it's critical that you coach your seller to fill that out ASAP and get that into your attorney. I know way too many where on the buyer side, they were doing great, but on the listing side, they hadn't filled it out and it ended up delaying close because they couldn't get the letter quick enough. Okay? So very important to get that information sheet. You're still negotiating the appraisal. There's still minutia, a lot of minutia. You're reminding them about canceling out their utilities, getting the utility info sheet from the seller to the buyer. You're still you're not going to have to worry about earnest money unless we are holding it. But you're still going to need to look at your settlement statement and review that with them, and then upload all of that as well. Okay? Now, you think, well, there's not as much stuff. Well, let me show you. The seller side, here's all the paperwork on the seller side. I don't know about you, but that doesn't look any shorter than it does on the buyer side, with all of the different stuff that you need to do. You've got to verify title, you've got to send the utility information, you've got to schedule the walkthrough. I mean, there's a ton of stuff that you're doing on the buyer side and on the listing side that you're responsible for. So we tend to think, well, listings are a whole lot easier. Not necessarily. I mean, it's easier up front because you're not driving people around, but on the back end, all of the paperwork, there's still a lot of stuff that you need to make sure is happening. Doesn't mean you have to do it, but it needs to be happening. Okay? So that is what is going on behind the scenes in a nutshell. What questions do you have of me of this process? And I will be glad to send to you. I'm going to write down everybody that's here. I'm going to email to you guys those sheets of that stuff that happens beforehand or, during, as far as the paperwork that happens. Chelsea, can you put in your email in? I don't think I have it. And Lamar, I don't think I have your email either. So if you can put that in the chat for me, then I will send that over to you guys so that you have it. Okay. So what else are you concerned about during, okay, I'm under contract now, what do I do?
Well, one thing I do is I put the important dates, like the due diligence date, the appraisal, and the loan. I just put those dates in my calendar just to give me heads up, since those are such important dates.
Exactly. So if you don't have a contract to close that's doing that for you, because they put them in my automatically send me the deadlines and put them in my calendar.
Okay.
Oh yeah, they do that too. So they take care of all of the stuff for you. So, but if not, then yes, you need to, because you don't want to miss a deadline for sure. Okay. Good point. Those deadlines are critical. The other deadline we didn't really talk about is your financial contingency. So you've got your due diligence, you've got your financial contingency. That's your loan contingency. On a conventional, you need to make sure that appraisal is in before that ends. If it's not, then you probably need to extend that financial contingency if possible, because if it comes in and it doesn't appraise, your buyer's screwed. They're buying that house. And the seller doesn't have to negotiate with you because your financial contingency and appraisal contingency is over. That is not a pretty sight. They're going to lose their earnest money. Hey, Narst. My husband's making noises behind. Sorry about that.
So if I'm clear, so if you pass the date of those two items,
Yep.
and the appraisal comes in 20 grand lower, that's what the house is going to sell for? Because that's all the money that the bank is going to loan.
The house is selling for whatever you guys had as the sales price, but all that the buyer is getting is what was on the loan, or I'm sorry, what was on the appraisal. So unless they're willing to come up with the difference, because you're already past your financial contingency, they don't have to negotiate with you.
Right.
And if they can't do it, then they're terminating, and that money is going to go to the seller. This is a very serious business that we are in. I hope you all understand how serious it is what we do. We are protecting, and we are working with people's most important and valuable asset. And there are deadlines that we are responsible for. So I hope you all take it really, really seriously about what we're doing. Those two deadlines are absolutely critical in my mind.
But you can extend them if the other party agrees.
If the other party agrees, you can extend it. Yes. So you just need to be aware of when you're coming up on it. And that's why you need to be on top of your lender, making sure that the appraisals come in on time and you've got everything, all your ducks in a row, that they've gotten their approval, or they call it a conditional approval, right? Yeah. They have to have that conditional approval by the end of the financial contingency period. It's critical, which is why you have to have great relationships with your lender. You've got to be able to give them a call and have them be responsive to you. Because if they're not calling you, and I've had that before where people were adamant that they were going to use somebody else that I didn't want them to use. Now let's put it this way, that I was not used to using. I try that again, and this is recorded. Sorry about that slip. And I can't get them on the phone. They won't return my calls, my emails, my texts, nothing. And we're coming up on the end of a due diligence or a financial contingency. That's when I lose sleep, because I take this very seriously, even if they don't. Right? Cool. What else? What other questions do you have about the under contract piece of this? Your job is to protect your client. Let me give you a scenario. So I had a listing not too long ago that we negotiated on back and forth. We turned it, they submitted an offer, we countered. And in that counter offer, we changed the price and some other things. I also changed the due diligence period from 10 days to 7 days. They agreed, we signed off, we went binding. I understood that they were going to have the inspection. I think it was 4 days. after we'd gone binding. So I thought, okay, good. So they went and had their inspection and I didn't hear anything. Crickets. It's the 6th day, nothing. 7th day, nothing. I hadn't heard a word from them. And I was like, oh, I even called and said, hey, just checking in with you to see how things are going. Nothing. The 8th day he calls me, he says, Julianne, I'm sorry, but we're going to be terminating. And I said, you're going to do what? And he said, yeah, we've got to terminate. She's freaking out that it's a townhouse and she's realizing townhouse really is not for her. I said, well, I'm sorry to hear you say that. And I'm really sorry because, you know, her earnest money's gone. That's going to the seller. And he said, what? And I said, well, we were over due diligence yesterday at midnight. And he just went, he missed it. He missed it on the counteroffer, and that was on him. So she wanted to terminate, and I said, you're welcome to terminate, but that money is going to my seller. Oh, this is a first-time home buyer. Oh my gosh, I screwed up. The agent says, I screwed up, right? And I knew what was within the rights for my seller. He said, is there any way you can talk to them? Can you please, please, please? So I said, okay, I'll talk to them. So I called my seller and I said, well, good news and bad news. They're terminating and we're moving on. The good news is you're going to get her earnest money because we're out of due diligence. And I explained the situation. They go, oh, we can't do that to her. She's a first-time home buyer. We're not like that. It's not that important. We won't take any money. And I said, excuse me. This is not her fault, it's her agent's fault, and you need to have something because this is a teaching moment for that agent. So they agreed to do half. So that $1,000 came out of the agent's pocket that he paid that earnest money for us to terminate. Now, you may say that I'm a big old, whatever, you can call me whatever, but in this situation, this was a moment he will never, ever, ever play around with due diligence again, right? This is serious business and we need to take it seriously. So you watch everything about your contract. That's one of the reasons why our office requires that you work with me through your first 3 transactions so you don't make mistakes. Because we can't afford you to make mistakes, right? Critical that you do what you're supposed to do, okay? All right, I'm off my soapbox. Thank you for that. It's just important that you understand how serious this is. And people do get ugly about it. I wasn't being ugly. I just knew that agent needed to pay for it. I mean, it was his fault. So, what other questions do you have about the process under contract? Can you be under contract on 2 properties?
Back up.
Say that, Kelly?
Back up. You could have a backup on one and then another contract on another.
You can have a formal backup while you're under contract on another one. Yes, you can. As long as you've put in your special steps on the backup offer that the seller or the buyer does not have to turn in the earnest money until they become primary, right? Because you don't want them to have to pay twice on earnest money. In this market, you can put offers on multiple properties, but when it comes time for the inspections to happen, they've got to choose one because they can't afford to be under contract on 2. They're going to have to turn in 2 earnest monies, 2 appraisals, all that kind of stuff, inspections. So yes, if you really are determined to be good at finding property for your client, you may have to put in multiple offers, but they're going to have to choose pretty quickly which is the one that they want to move forward with. Okay? Earnest money. If for some reason you terminate, and our office is holding the earnest money, turnaround time on that is at least 10 days. So your client needs to be aware that if they're terminating, they're not going to get their earnest money back tomorrow. It has to clear the bank, and then there's about a 10-day process once it's cleared to clear it or to resubmit it from our office. Sometimes we can put a rush, but on average, it's about 10 days. So they need to know that. Okay? What else? Oh, the last thing. So I mentioned to you contract to close. One of the biggest benefits of having contract to close, besides the fact that they do all of the minutia paperwork so that you can be out there doing the things that you're supposed to do, which are lead generate, lead follow-up, negotiate contracts, go on appointments, and script practice. That is your job description. Everything else that we do can be leveraged. One of the biggest benefits or value that a contract to close does is because they do this on a regular basis, you don't have to earn the right to have your closings get paid at close. Basically, as soon as you do it and do it well with a closing coordinator, they'll put in for pay at close. So when you show up for the closing, you get paid at close. And I don't know about you, but that's a real big benefit to be able to have that money right away and not have to wait a couple more days from the office. So they take care of that for you. So if you have any other questions with contract to close, and this is not about a contract to close, my job is to help you to do leverage, and that is the best way that you can leverage as an individual agent, is leveraging your time so that you're lead generating more. I don't want you to spend your time being busy, right? Okay. All right, all. This has been the Women Power Group and Lamar is what it's been. And I'm glad to have you here. If you have any other questions about contract to close or what you have to do in the process, don't hesitate to call me or text me. Texting me is always the best way. Okay. I will send over to you those sheets so that you have them on all of the things that need to happen on the paperwork side, contract to close. Okay. Anything else?
Thanks, Julianne.
You're welcome. I'll talk to you all later.
Thanks,
Thank
Julianne.
you.
Bye.